All right, all right. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
What's the music?
Let's get this kicked off. Alexa, stop. I mean, it's good music, but
Good, yeah.
I was listening to a little Rush, taking it old school.
Good.
So how you guys been?
Pretty good. How about you?
Real good.
Good. Just, I talked to you guys a month ago, a little over a month, actually, a month and a week. And it's like Groundhog Day, a lot just, no travel, a lot of Zoom calls, and a lot of, it's a new way of doing business, but, still just grateful to get paid,
Right.
and providing a service that the industry seems to value, I guess. So last time we talked, we were with Joe and Wes Verno of Verno Consulting, and they put out a great newsletter called Beer Briefs, which is best practices newsletters for beer wholesalers. We see my assistant has joined us in the background. With Biscuit, do you mind taking notes? Okay, thank you. We'll put a link to that for you guys to subscribe. And so, Joe and Wes, tell me what you've been seeing out there as distributors continue to adapt to this new reality.
Okay, I'll cover some general higher level things, and then Wes will cover some specific things that we're seeing as on-premise opens up around the country. Okay?
Yeah.
Well, we've been talking to wholesalers all over the country as usual, and the interesting things that when they've gone into on-premise to pick up beer, on-premise doesn't have as much beer as everybody thought it would have, and they don't know if people took it home or they threw it away or whatever, but there's just not as much beer to pick up as they thought. There's beer to pick up, but it's not the anywhere near the magnitude that they thought it was going to be. So a lot of wholesalers are excited about that, because we all know what they're going to have to do with the beer they pick up, and that there's less full draft barrels to pick up because a lot of accounts didn't have any backstock. So all the barrels are online, so they're not giving them credit for those. So they're having to deal with less full kegs. Yes, they're picking up some, but again, not as many as they originally thought.
That's interesting, because of course there's not going to be a lot of untapped kegs out in the trade. I mean, you deliver, if you're going to be probably on weekly delivery, so why would you have much backstock, except that it was St. Patrick's Day. But I think most of the untapped kegs were still in the distributor's warehouse.
Exactly. We find that wholesalers are thinking about or contemplating, since there's all these changes going on, they're increasing their delivery minimums. So the retailer was willing to accept less than usual service frequency because of the virus and protection of their employees, et cetera, et cetera. So when the on-premise opens up, they're not going to service them as frequently, and they're going to try to take advantage of the situation in a way to save delivery costs. I mean, because everybody knows that every wholesaler over-services on-premise. So a number of wholesalers we've been speaking to are trying to rein that back in, and a few wholesalers we spoke with are actually going to limit who does get draft service, because why do I want to drop off a 6-barrel every 3 weeks and have to go clean the line and everything else? I'm actually losing money on it. So they're looking at it differently. I think this is, we know that the consumers are acting differently, and we know that retailers are acting differently. And I think some wholesalers are looking at their business saying, do I want to continue to lose money in these areas? And our philosophy is, if they're getting serviced by 2 wholesalers, they're both losing money. It'd be better to be serviced by have one vendor, let that vendor make money, and the other vendor will save money. So everybody wins.
Right. So, not every account gets all the brands,
Right.
So
they're just being more deliberate about how
No,
they're.
no, we got to be careful because you can't. I don't think you can talk to your competitor about which accounts you're going to take on. I
Oh,
think
no, not at
it's
all.
got to
No,
be
not at all.
illegal. Yeah,
Yeah, they're not doing
but
that, but they're saying, if the account doesn't do X amount of volume in total, do we want to give them draft service? If draft service automatically means we're going to lose money in the account.
right.
So, and again, we're talking probably about the bottom 15 or 20% of the on-premise accounts. Obviously, like you were saying, and you've published on this, even the bigger accounts that had 40 tap handles are opening with 20 tap handles. And the wholesalers are offering less esoteric brands, and they're going more with core brands. So we see them not nearly as much selection. So, and they're reining in their salespeople to make sure that they're selling the limited book and not trying to sell stuff that's not even in the book. So another thing that we're seeing is I've spoken to 3 wholesalers so far that are contemplating this anyway, or are doing this. They're not promising 24-hour delivery of the on-premise. The reason being is that they don't know who's going to order and how much they're going to order, and they can't service everybody if they open at the same time, even though there's going to be less opening up. So by taking the order today and saying, hey, we'll deliver you in the next 3 days, they'll have time to make a legitimate routing decision of what truck it's going to go on and what's going to be most efficient, rather than trying to deliver everybody the next day,
Right.
which is an interesting concept, at least for the first month or so, maybe even for the first 2 months.
I mean, you think that might open the door to permanent 48-hour pre-sale, at least for on-premise?
I hope not, because 48-hour pre-sale doesn't work.
Really? Tell me, explain why, because I don't understand it really either.
Well, because 48 hours, that means on Friday you're selling for Tuesday.
Right.
On Thursday you're selling for Monday. 90% of the wholesalers in the country bitch because they can't sell Friday for Monday. How are they going to sell Thursday for Monday or Friday for Tuesday? Plus, the retailer, the salesperson's in the account. On the twice-a-week accounts, the patterns don't work. A lot of times the salesman's in the account before the delivery's been made, writing an order for the next delivery, because of the extra day. And it's really a bad system. The people that like it, the reason it's an operational solution, which means, I want to do 48-hour delivery so I can pick my orders during the day and not have a night shift. Does that make sense?
Right.
It's not a sales solution. It's a delivery solution or a warehousing solution. The problem with that is most wholesalers don't have room to stage the pallets. So if I pick my pallets this morning for delivery tomorrow, because I got the orders yesterday, what am I going to do with all these pallets? Unless I have extra trucks, and most wholesalers don't have enough extra trucks. So we've not seen it work really well. There are wholesalers that do it and they love it, but they've conditioned their retailers to accept Thursday for Monday and Friday for Tuesday. It's a pretty screwy system.
I mean, it does seem like it's appeasing the warehouse. It is hard to find people that work at night, especially. Right. I mean, now it's probably not, but during full employment, it was harder and harder. But right. It does seem like a solution that's chasing a problem that's not there. So,
right. The thing is, if you do the 48-hour delivery, most people who do 48-hour delivery are still picking orders midday and evening the night before the delivery, because right. they don't have any room to store the pallets. So they're waiting for the trucks to come in. So even the people that want to go that direction, we don't see it working very well. So that aside, but the idea of not promising 24-hour delivery to the on-premise accounts as they reopen is that you have time to make a routing decision every day based on how many, rather than saying I have to deliver all these guys tomorrow, all these retailers tomorrow. You can spread it out over the next 3 days when your trucks are in the area and things like that. One of the things that we're suggesting to wholesalers is that they have a less frequent delivery service. In other words, instead of it being weekly, maybe go every other week or every 3 weeks or every month, but send the salesman in every week. Send the salesman in, let them do triage, figure out, hey, is this account doing what they thought they were going to do with a third of the people or a half the people? And, and then as they learn more about the account, they can change the delivery frequency, but don't go in every week and then say, hey, guess what? I want to cut you back to once a month because you're not doing enough volume, because it's hard to cut service. It's easy to add service. That
Right.
makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, start with a baseline,
Right.
under promise, and then maybe over deliver
Right.
down the road.
The other high level thing I want to mention, that, and then Wes would talk about more detailed stuff, is that every wholesaler we're talking about is talking about the payroll protection plan, from the government.
Yep.
There are a number of wholesalers, because of their legal counsel and from their CPAs, they're giving the money back. Now, we're not accountants and we're not attorneys, so we don't know the right answer there. But it's almost equally split between who's keeping the money and who's giving the money back. And it's a pretty screwy deal because the rules are changing every day from the government.
Right.
So, today you might feel like you have to give the money back, then tomorrow the rules change, and then, all of a sudden you can keep it. But, a lot of wholesalers, you think about, they're getting a few $1 million, $2 or $3 million, which I have wholesalers, that's gonna be the difference between making a decent profit this year, not even a normal profit, but just a decent profit, or them having a marginal profit year. And so you better really figure out where you stand on that. Because if you give it back, I don't know what happens if they find out they could have kept it, whether they can go back and get the money or not. But
no, I think I'm almost positive that once you give it back, there's no getting it.
Exactly.
The government doesn't. They're pretty sticky, and
right.
and I know, and like you say, I mean, the government does. When you take capital from the federal government, they reserve the right to change the rules midstream,
right.
and it's in the writing, it's in the small print, and but I'm kind of I guess where you're going is probably just save it, put in a different hold on to it, and then wait till all the rules shake out to see if you do really need it, and
right.
I think that makes sense.
Some wholesalers are saying that they're being counseled on there's going to be big penalties and stuff like that, and I don't know whether it's not based on need. The way that I looked at it was, if I'm a wholesaler and I knew that money wasn't available, I might have made different labor decisions, not knowing the money was available. And the money was available so that I wouldn't make those decisions, so I wouldn't lay people off. So I don't know whether they fit in the guidelines or not, but for those who take the money, it's doing exactly what it was intended to do, to prevent layoffs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
and there's still a lot of uncertainty. I mean, yeah, it's opening up, but it's going very slowly, and we don't know if it'll close back up again if we get a second wave. So yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty out there.
The bigger wholesalers who are over the employment limit, 500 employees, whatever the number is, they're laying off people.
Yeah.
On each coast, they're laying off people because we read about Reyes.
Yeah.
But even on the East Coast, we have wholesalers that are laying off people because, they're maybe by the end of May, they're going to open up. And again, if they're not going to get any money from the government because they have too many employees, then they're laying people off. So for the in-between wholesaler, which is 80% of them, the one that has the wholesalers with less than 500 employees, the money is a big deal. But I don't have a right answer for the money, but just from we're getting both sides of the story, from people giving money back and people keeping the money, but it seems to be an issue that there's no answer to at this point. But Wes, you want to cover some of the detail stuff?
Yeah, sure. So,
now wait a minute. Before we get into that, Wes, I need to know what happened to your killer mustache.
yeah.
Did that fall prey to probably a young lady, your wife,
No.
maybe?
It was my first time for that, and it lasted for a couple of weeks, and it was a good ride, but
yeah,
it was a little distracting to my sleep schedule, so I wasn't used to that, so I had to get rid of it.
Okay, all right.
It's a fair question, though. Fair question. Got a lot of good feedback on it. Thank you.
Good.
So we think there's going to be all the on-premise accounts are going to fall into three different buckets. There's going to be the ones that just never reopen, right? And then there's the ones that are going to try to reopen and then not work out, or they're going to fail in some capacity. And you obviously want to limit your risk in those. And then there's obviously going to be the ones that open up and stay open. Now, they might not be as busy, or they might not be as productive as they were before, but they'll at least survive this. So regardless, we need to figure out where all of our accounts fall in that bucket and try to be as proactive in that as we can. So if you haven't started, if your state hasn't started opening up yet, you need to, I think the first step to do would be to make sure that your account information is all correct and all the contact information, because you're about to start getting a whole lot of phone calls and a whole lot of orders and a whole lot of miscellaneous off unscheduled work. So if we can have everything on our end buttoned up from a who's calling who and who's talking to who, then you'll be better off.
And I imagine that in the on-premise that there's going to be different people. Like some people are probably going to leave their job as manager of some restaurant and bar. They've gone on to do something else, right?
Exactly.
I mean, like, hell with it.
All that turnover is gonna impact every single one of your account records, right, or the wholesaler's account records. So be proactive and start figuring out who the right person to talk to is once they do open up or start their opening process. Because if you're trying to chase down a manager that was laid off, 6 weeks ago in 2/3 of your accounts, then you're going to spin your wheels a whole lot, right? So making sure the contact information is right, and then being prepared to receive a whole bunch of orders all at the same time is not something necessarily where you were used to from an unscheduled order standpoint. So maybe providing admin people with a script or at least a list of questions that they're going to be receiving all these phone calls. So where do you want them to direct the phone calls, and how do you want them to answer it, and what do you want them to promise or not promise from a service standpoint, but making sure that they're all speaking from the same songbook, if you will, or singing from the same songbook. And like Joe talked about, we think the pre-sale rep should be the point person as much as possible, and they might have to visit the accounts more frequently than you're willing to deliver, which I think we think is a good idea. But they should also, every rep, they should also be given a standard list of questions. Are you going to be open? How much capacity are you going to have? Are you going to serve draft? Are you going to, what are your hours going to be? Well, what's your expectations for, capacity, all that kind of stuff. And then if everybody's asking the same questions, then sales management can do triage, and they can essentially figure out what's the best way to service each level of account based on the same questions being asked throughout the market. And then again, like we talked about a month ago, every account that opens up, especially the small ones, but pretty much every account should be pushed online ordering as much as possible. And we've had a lot of clients that have finally gotten some really good leadway during this last 6 weeks to get a lot of their accounts on there. So we're starting to see some progress there. With regards to brands, and one of the big issues is going to be we're sitting on all this inventory, and most of it's gone out of code, but the little bit we do have left, at least from a draft standpoint, where do you want to spend that resource, right? Where do you want your draft to go? And it's almost like an allocation system, where just because an account has draft or has handles or wants draft, are you going to give, if you only have a limited amount of draft and you're not going to get it from the brewery anytime soon, where do you want to spend your draft, right? And that requires a little bit of foresight, a little bit of planning. Just because a little taqueria wants to have a handle doesn't necessarily mean you should probably spend that handle there or spend that keg there. So being real selective on where you're going to spend your limited resource in that regard is definitely something that should be happening.
Yeah, because a lot of these accounts, they can do with just a couple of cases of beer.
Right.
They don't have to have a keg, and I've visited several accounts this week. Texas just opened up, so
right.
And they've taken, you can only open up at 20% capacity. I've seen a little bit of fudging on what 20% of capacity is, at least in the bars around my neighborhood. But yeah, I mean, there's paper cups on most of the tap handles I'm seeing. There's just draft beer is just a shit show out there right now, and it's and there's a viable alternative. It's called packaged beer.
That's right.
And it's easy to manage. So yeah, I see that happening.
Yeah. And so just don't go crazy spending all, trying to fill every single draft line out there. Right. But in that same light, it's going to be difficult for the big breweries to get back on. I don't know where they are with regards to producing. They're probably going to wait till it's a sure thing, right? But your local suppliers, the local suppliers can turn around product pretty quickly. So maybe some collaboration with your local, the local suppliers that can say, these are the only brands that we want, and if you can turn it around in a couple of weeks, we can get it out in the market. But limiting the product available and limiting the accounts that you're willing to do that for, they can at least help fill the pipeline until the larger suppliers are back online. Obviously that's going to be state by state and supplier by supplier, but and you wouldn't want to do that with every local supplier. Again, doing a little bit of triage. Who are your better suppliers and who are your more stable and or what are their more stable and consistent brands. But even just some stupid, not stupid, but silly things like, all these accounts, they're going to want to let the world know that they're open, and they're all going to have a million sign requests come flooding in the same week. Do you want to spend hours upon hours upon hours trying to produce all these custom signs saying, hey, we're open, great news, all this kind of stuff. But instead, before the accounts start opening, just have your sign shop print off a couple hundred generic, we're back open, come see us, whatever it may be. Just simple signs to get them through the first week or two of this, of the reopening.
That is a great idea. And
just get ahead of it, right?
Yeah. You can print off just, we're open. Just get the sign shop going and then do a little branding later.
Yeah, exactly. And
we're legal, of course. We're legal.
Yeah, right. But so there's a lot of little things like that you can do to get ahead. But the delivery is going to be an interesting part of it because we're going to have hundreds of hotshot deliveries essentially, and like Joe said, you can't necessarily make them all tomorrow. So the whole dynamic routing component of the next couple of weeks is going to be really interesting, and it's going to be variable every single day. So you might want to dedicate, your wholesaler might want to dedicate a couple vans or small box trucks. They don't have to be big time CDLA drivers. That every day they're going to be making a ton of stops, and they're going to be different stops every single day. And just to again fill the pipeline a little bit and get as many accounts back online as possible. And
so like a couple of kind of permanent hot shot routes, like
for the next
take the orders as they come in, ad hoc or whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily. Did I lose you? There we go. I wouldn't necessarily bog down the regular delivery routes with 20 or 10 hotshot deliveries that they weren't expecting today. And that's how you're going to lose your long-term drivers. Even in this environment, I'm sure there's plenty of people that are still looking to hire CDL drivers. So before just piling on your existing routes for the next couple of weeks, I would have, dedicated hotshot off day, unscheduled dynamic routes that until your regular delivery frequencies kick back in and what the market's going to look like.
I've seen online where it seems like a lot of pre-salesmen have just been doing that on their own.
Yeah,
because they have, some of them have vans, and I've seen they put online pictures like I've turned back into a delivery driver. You just see cases and cases of beer in their vans. So you just it's kind of a Wild West. You got to do what you have to do to get the beer out there.
You think about it, 25% of the accounts are probably monthly, and the other 25% are every other week before COVID, and 50% are weekly. Well, if they all want beer today, we're not built for 100% all in 1 week. So how do you do it without adding big trucks and big routes? You do it with people that don't have CDLs. You do it with salespeople, you do it with warehouse people, and you use small vans and get that first delivery out there. Then you can put them on a less than once a week service. But in the beginning, everybody's going to want beer right away. So.
Sure. Yep.
Well, what else you got, Wes?
Let's see here. I got my list. Obviously, with regards to draft, going around and making sure all the lines are clean before you need to tap into them would probably be a worthwhile exercise if they haven't been cleaned already. But you don't want to have to, once an account comes back online, you don't want to have to go get the product out of there, deal with that, deal with cleaning the lines, and then get them online. I would just do as much of that pre-work as possible. So then if and when they do reopen or want draft, you can just plug and play.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned before, you know, Ray is the largest wholesaler by far, furloughed a bunch of folks, and they did a national reroute. You know, imagine how complex that had to be.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think there's just going to be reroute after reroute, because it's not going to be like everybody's going to come on. It's going to be the same as it was a year ago. It's going to be
Right.
Every month is going to be different. And so it's really, I think we're going into an era of massive and frequent, maybe not massive, but frequent tweaks on reroutes. Do you agree with that, guys?
Yeah. We talked about that last time when we were with you. It's as a preemptive strategy for wholesalers was, if you're not good at routing, you need to spend this time getting somebody up to speed and get good at routing, because like you said, every month there's going to be meaningful changes to the world, right? Into your market. So it's not going to be this annual tweak of little routes. There's going to be big changes on a regular basis. So the more proficient at routing you can be, you can't take 6 weeks to implement a new route or to design new routes when you need a new one every month, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
So, you know, most wholesalers aren't, even though they have the technology, we've mentioned this before, they aren't great at routing. You know, they can tweak routes, you know, move an account from this route to that route. But if they have 300 new accounts today, not new accounts, but accounts that they need to route, they're not necessarily good at that. So they'll get the beer out, but it may not be efficient. And maybe efficiency is not that important the first month or two. But just being able to respond to the demand, they're going to need to reroute or adjust routes pretty frequently. And the thing you don't want to do is, as the on-premise opens up, you don't want it to screw up your off-premise if it's on the same truck, right? I mean, because the off-premise is sort of in a groove now, if you think about it. I mean, and as the on-premise opens up, if they start taking more and more resources, and it's on the same truck as the off-premise, not necessarily the bulk trucks, but the up and down the street trucks, it could have a negative impact on the biggest part of your business. So,
Right. That's good advice. Good watch out. You know, just
one of the things that we suggest is that you give the salespeople a list of, here are the 9 draft products I want you to sell. Every account you go in, to try to sell these 9 before you get to 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Don't let the salesman make that decision for you, because then you can make sure you're taking care of your priority, not necessarily your biggest, but your priority suppliers. Because we're hearing from wholesalers that are opening up that suppliers are coming in and they want 100% distribution in the first 2 weeks. You know, so you got half the accounts opening, and you got half, everybody has half as many tap handles, and everybody wants 100% of what they had before. And the math just doesn't work. You know what I mean? But the suppliers are being that ballsy in terms of, you know, I can understand why they want, you know, high performance, but their asks are just unrealistic, that we're hearing from wholesalers.
Oh, and I'm hearing the same thing, Joe. It's sometimes some of these guys don't get it, what's out there. They're like, I mean, and they want to have meetings, and they want to go right back to the way it was, and it's just not going to be that way. And, you know, if there's a silver lining, we're going to get rid of a lot of unnecessary meetings, unnecessary ride widths, just like we said last time. And hopefully we get to a new normal that's more sane than the last one. And you know, and the other thing that goes along with that is wholesaler incentives, and that the supplier, you know, co-ops with the wholesaler. And I would imagine the wholesaler needs to be careful of what they agree to co-op, because
I agree with that.
You know, it's you don't want to start paying your pre-salesman to sell things that aren't good for your own business.
I agree with that. That's a good call. I mean, I think wholesalers are worried about that even under normal times, because management, middle management or sales management, brand management's making those decisions a lot of times, and they're not necessarily the decisions that the top level management would be making. You know, they're thinking about siphoning money from the supplier to the people that report to me, you know, my salespeople, versus what's good for the wholesaler, you know, and those two things aren't always aligned. And But it's funny, in our practice, we're doing more and more brand or supplier management in terms of how do we align those decisions with what the company needs and wants. Because I think a lot of wholesalers, owners, and upper level management are realizing that alignment's not happening, and they see their people spending a lot of time selling Joe's Blueberry Beer instead of selling Coors or Anheuser-Busch or whatever be the case. I mean, so the owners are starting to be more aware of that. So you'll see a change in that, I think, coming up. More discipline in terms of making those decisions. It's not just getting money. Hey, there's $5,000 available, and I have 20 sales guys. That's $500 a piece. So, or $400 a piece. I need to get that money and do this incentive. Well, you don't have to do the incentive. We can still find ways to get money to the salespeople. So,
right.
It's just a screwy deal.
Yeah.
Anything else, Wes?
I was going to say, we were talking with a wholesaler this morning, or a couple of them, and obviously special events are on hold, and who knows what they're going to look like going forward. But this is kind of a good opportunity to take a hard look at all the events, all the legacy events that have been going on, and again, have a proactive approach as far as these are the ones that we want to be a part of, and these are the ones that, even if they come back online, we're not necessarily going to participate in going forward. And then also, this is time to set up some parameters with regards to what are you willing to offer when you do a special event, from an equipment standpoint, from a labor standpoint, and a product standpoint. And if you do participate in a special event, does the event have to pay for that equipment or pay for that labor? And wholesalers are getting a little bit more, they're doing less, less is more approach with regards to events, and they didn't necessarily expect 100% of them to go by the wayside like they have in the short term here. But again, having a plan for when they do come back online, it's not just, let's just do it because we've always done it.
Yeah, I mean, special events is one of those things that just snowballs, because like you said, if you agree with it one year, then it's probably you're in for 100 years. Right? It just kind of just renews, and yeah, that's that isn't it. This crisis has put a lot of stopgaps and a lot of just activities that wholesalers take for granted as normal way of doing business that I think will change going forward. And that special events definitely would be one of them. And we talk about draft beer and being unproductive or unprofitable. Stadiums, I recall several distributors telling me that if they didn't have a stadium in their market, they wouldn't want to carry any draft beer because the stadium was the only profitable. It still even wasn't that profitable because you're doing 100 keg drops at a time, but yeah, it's keg beer is tough to make a profit unless you're selling it at a really high price. It's heavy and it's bulky. It's hard to move around. And, like I said this before, I don't know how you pick up full kegs. I mean, how do you physically, on a side loader, at least, if you have a back loader, I get it. But on a side loader truck, there's no way to get a full keg back into that bay. I mean, I couldn't. I wouldn't want to try. Straight my milk.
We have some clients that they're telling their retailers that where they have to have the barrels if they want them picked up. I mean, they're not the wholesaler's not going in the basement or going up and downstairs trying to bring down full barrels. They're saying, hey, if you want us to pick up your barrels and give you credit, they need to be at the back door ready to go, and let the retailer worry about it because they don't want to kill their drivers. And,
I mean, it's a full keg is a lot easier going downstairs than up. I don't know. There's something, gravity, there's these forces you can't deny.
Right. Right.
Well, listen, guys, I've got you. I've had you for more than I should, over 30 minutes. And any parting thoughts that you got for our readers? Okay. Well, listen,
we're excited. We're excited that things are opening up. There's just going to be a lot of instability for that. This industry is based on a route. You see the same 80 accounts every week, and there's going to be so much flex going on between suppliers, salespeople, deliveries, everything that the industry is going to be challenged. I think the industry is going to come out better. managerially, if that makes sense. Now, you know, obviously there's an economic impact, but managerially, I think they're going to be better. And it's amazing how creative some of our clients have gotten on dealing with, you know, even not having on-premise now that on-premise is opening up, what they're doing with on-premise and how they dealt with the big. We have clients that they do the grocery stores every week, you know, twice a week. Everybody else on the off-premises every other week, including the convenience stores and everything. So, you know, when things start to normalize a little bit, do they want to bring those guys back to every week? You know, they would never have thought of doing that pre-COVID, you know, but now they're saying, hey, the retailer's willing to, you know, take an every other week delivery and everything else. So I'm just saying that a lot of the waste in the system, people are going to have to recover because they're going to have to make up for the last, you know, 2 or 3 months of, you know, softer than normal sales. And again, moving forward, the sales are going to be softer than normal. So I think that, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of innovation and a lot of new ideas that, so we're excited about that. We're already booking travel. I mean, we're booking travel for June. You know, we have clients saying, hey, you got to get out here, you know, so we're excited about that too. And I'm not crazy about getting in an airplane, but you know, if that's par for the course, then I guess that's what I have to do. So
Yeah.
Any last comments, Wes?
I'm sorry.
Do you have any other closing comments?
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. Joe and Wes Verno, Verno Consulting. They published the Beer Brief, which is a great resource for best practices. And guys, great talking to you. And let's keep it going in another month or two. If you have new things to say, just give me a call. We'd love to have you on here.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks,
all right, guys. Thanks
Bye.
a lot.